The retirement benchmark you've been measuring yourself against was never built for you. Not for your income level, not for your starting point. Millions of people in their 40s and 50s are judging themselves against a number designed for a completely different person, a different salary, a different starting age. I've run the numbers. The model doesn't fit, which means the real question isn't how far behind you are. It's whether you've been measuring yourself against the right target at all. In this video, I'm going to show you which benchmark actually applies to your situation, and the answer is going to surprise you. Now, if you are listening to me, you're probably sitting with a version of the same question. I know I'm behind, but how far behind am I really? And is there anything I can actually do about it at this stage? That's exactly what this video answers. The common answer, the one you'll find on every financial website, every retirement calculator, your financial advisor's office, is called the Fidelity benchmark. 3 times your salary saved by 40, 6 times by 50, 8 times by 67. That number is everywhere, and almost all the content built around it is going to make you feel worse. Not because your situation is bad, but because it's pointing you at the wrong target. I call this the benchmark trap, and here's why it matters. That model was built for people who started saving at 22. On higher than average pay, with steady jobs and no big gaps. Most people's lives don't look like that. Now, T. Rowe Price, one of the biggest investment companies in the world, publishes a completely different set of targets for people on middle incomes. They factor in how much of your income Social Security will replace. The two companies openly disagree. Almost no one talks about this, and the headlines make it worse. You've probably seen the stat, the average person in their 50s has over $1 million saved. What they leave out, that number, is pulled way up by a small group of very wealthy people. The real middle number is around $438,000. If you earn $70,000 a year, the Fidelity 6X target is $420,000. Most people are much closer than the headlines make them feel. Now, here's the good news. In this video, I'm going to walk you through 3 things. First, the right savings target for your income level, and how to work out the number you should actually be measuring yourself against. Second, why the numbers in the headlines are built to scare you, not help you, and what the real picture looks like for someone in their 40s, 50s, or early 60s. And third, a savings window that opened in 2025 that most people your age have never heard of. I'm not going to give you the number yet, but when we get there, it's going to change how you think about the next few years. I call it the sprint window. It only exists for a very specific group of people, for a very specific window of time. Now, why trust any of this? I've looked at the Fidelity model across different income levels and starting ages. I've checked it against the T. Rowe Price research and the Secure 2.0 law itself. The pattern is clear. This is the video I wish had existed 5 years ago. Before the worry, before the feeling of being stuck, before measuring myself against a number that was never meant for someone like me. Let's get into it. You've probably seen the headline, and if you're anything like most people, it hit you hard. But that number, the one that's been sitting in the back of your head, doesn't represent a single real person. Here's why. When you calculate a mean, you add every number together and divide by how many people there are. Sounds fair. But imagine 10 people in a room. 9 of them have saved $200,000 each. One person has $50 million. The average savings in that room is over $5 million. But 9 out of 10 people in that room would tell you they feel behind. That's exactly what's happening with retirement savings data. A small number of very wealthy people drag the mean way up. The headline stops representing what typical people have and starts representing what the wealthiest people have. The median tells a completely different story. The median is the person right in the middle. Half of people have more, half have less, and that number is around $438,000. Now here's where it gets personal. If you earn $70,000 a year, Fidelity says you need 6 times your salary by 50. That's $420,000. The median person in their 50s has $438,000. The typical person, not the wealthy outlier, the typical person is basically at the target that's been making you feel like a failure. You haven't been measuring yourself against real people. You've been measuring yourself against a headline built to get clicks. I call this the headline trap. And it's the first reason the picture is much better than you think. But the benchmark itself has an even deeper problem. Because even that Fidelity target, the one the typical person is hitting, might not be the right target for you at all. Now, where did that Fidelity target actually come from? Fidelity built this for a very specific person. Someone who started investing at 22. Someone who earned well above what most people earn. Someone who saved 15% of their salary every year right from the start. And someone who never missed a year. No medical bills that wiped out the savings account. No divorce. No year where they were just keeping the lights on. That's not most people, and it's probably not you. But here's what makes this even deeper. Even if you accept that the Fidelity number is imperfect, you might still be measuring yourself against the wrong target, because the size of the gap you actually need to fill is not the same for everyone. Here's what I mean. When you earn less, Social Security covers more of what you need each month. The math works this way. People on lower and middle incomes get back a higher share of what they made, so the private savings they actually need to cover retirement is smaller than the Fidelity model assumes. Not zero, but smaller. T. Rowe Price looked at this directly. They published publish different retirement targets based on your income level. And for people in the middle, the nurses, the teachers, the office managers, the families that lived on one income through their kids' school years, those targets are quite a bit lower than the Fidelity standard. Think about that. Think about a teacher or a nurse, someone who spent their 30s raising kids on one income. The Fidelity benchmark was never designed with them in mind, but they've been measuring themselves against it for years. I call this the wrong report card. You've been graded on someone else's test, a test built for a different student at a different school with a completely different situation. And every year you feel like you're failing, not because you are, but because the test was never yours to take. The real question isn't whether you hit 6 times your salary. The real question is how much do you actually need to cover the gap that Social Security won't fill at your income level for your life. And once you look at it that way, the number looks very different. But knowing the right benchmark is only half of it, because the question that matters most is what you can actually do from here. And that answer depends on something most people have never been shown. Alright, the third thing I want to show you is something I call the pivot window. And here's why this is so important. Most people in their 40s and 50s have already decided it's too late. They've done the math, or they think they have, and they've landed on the same answer. The window is closed. There's no point starting now. That belief, it's too late, is one of the most expensive thoughts you can carry at 50, because it stops everything. You don't contribute more, you don't look at your options, you just write the whole thing off. But the math doesn't actually say it's too late. It says something different. Here's what the math says. If you're 50 years old and you have $200,000 saved, and you put away $1,000 a month for the next 15 years at a 7% return, roughly the long-term average of the stock market, you end up with around $640,000 by 65. Not because of luck, not because of timing, just because you showed up every month. Compound interest doesn't stop working because you started late. It rewards every month you put something in, even the late ones. Vanguard published research on this exact group. People who had almost nothing set aside at 45. And they found that a real savings push in the 15 years before retirement could rebuild what looked like a totally lost position. Not perfect, but workable. Now, here's the thing. The pivot window is real, and it is also closing. Every year you don't act is a year compound interest can't work for you. That's how this works. It rewards time. And you have less of it than someone who started at 30. That's just true. But you're not at zero. Most people watching this have something saved. And for a lot of you, that something, with a real push over the next 10 to 15 years, can become enough. The question isn't whether it's too late. The question is, how much of your pivot window is still open? And the answer, for most people watching this, is more than they think. Let me step back for a second. We've covered 3 things. The first, the benchmark you've been measuring yourself against was never built for your income level. It was built for someone on a higher salary, who started earlier, and never had a rough year. That's the headline trap. The second, when you adjust for what Social Security actually covers at your income level, the gap you need to fill is smaller than the Fidelity model assumes. You've been graded on the wrong report card. And the third, compound interest still works. Even now, even at 50, even at 55. The math is different than if you'd started at 30, but the pivot window is still open. Now, I want to show you something that most people in their early 60s have never heard of. Not because it's hidden, it's written into law, but because almost nobody is explaining it clearly, and almost nobody is leading with it. It's a specific window, legal, built into the retirement system, that lets people in a certain age range put away nearly 3 times what most people are allowed to save in a single year. If you're between 60 and 63, this is available to you right now. By the way, I've linked a free retirement gap calculator in the description. If you want to run your own numbers after this video, it's there. Takes about 2 minutes. Now, let me show you what this window is and what it means. $35,750. That's the number. That's how much someone between the ages of 60 and 63 is legally allowed to put into their 401k in a single year. Most people I talk to about this don't believe it at first. They think the number is $23,000 because that's what's quoted everywhere. And for most people, that's correct. Turns out, in 2022, Congress passed something called Secure 2.0. And buried inside it, not on the front page, not in the headlines, was a rule that rewrote the math for anyone in their early 60s. I call this the sprint window. And here's why this is so important. The standard 401k limit is $23,000 a year. If you're over 50, you're already allowed to add an extra $7,500 on top of that, a catch-up most people in their 50s have never used. That takes you to $30,500. But if you're between 60 and 63, just that 4-year window, Secure 2.0 created a second layer, a super catch-up. And that brings your total legal contribution to $35,750 in a single year. Tax-advantaged, legal, right now. Think about what that means over 3 years, ages 60, 61, and 62. If you maxed it out, that's over $107,000 you could add to your retirement account in the 3 years before most plans start drawing down. At 7% return, that grows on top of whatever you already have. Not for everyone. If you're not in a position to contribute that much right now, this isn't your move yet. But if you can push, and you're in that window, and you didn't know this existed, this is the sprint, and it only lasts 4 years. Alright, that is all I've got for this video. Here's what we covered. The benchmark you've been measured against wasn't built for your income level. That's the headline trap. The report card was designed for someone else. That's the wrong report card. The window to act is still open. Even now, that's the pivot window. And if you're between 60 and 63, there's a government sprint baked into law that most people your age have never heard of. That's the sprint window. We started this video with a number that made you feel behind. I want to leave you with something different. You weren't behind. You were measuring yourself against the wrong finish line. Here's your one thing to do after watching this. Find your number, not to judge it, just to see it. Write down what you actually have saved across all your accounts in one place, because you can't close a gap you haven't looked at. In the next video, if you're in your 50s and the savings number is uncomfortable, I'm going to walk you through the first 3 moves to make, in order, starting from wherever you are right now. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe. That's the next thing dropping on this channel. And if this changed how you see your situation, hit like. It takes 2 seconds and it helps this reach the people who actually need it. Take care of yourself. I will see you next time.